So I'm sure the comment section of this video is going to be very peaceful. I'm going to talk about the topic of yes, is Islam a religion of peace? First of all, I think a lot of you guys have been watching way too much mainstream media from the West. CNN, MSNBC, ABC News, Fox News, they're feeding you guys with a lot of propaganda. I'm going to talk about Islam from the Chinese perspective as well. So by the way, I think most of you guys will know this if I ask this. So what do you guys think is the most visited city in China? So it's the capital, Beijing. So Beijing is the #1 most visited city in China. But I think very few people actually know the second most visited city in China. So this city, I went there myself. I was there for 6 days just during my past trip to China. Yeah, it's pronounced Xi'an. So it's a massive city of over 12 million people. It's been around for over 4,000 years. So the city has a lot of history. Also, the city has a lot of Muslims. So yeah, if you go to the city of Xi'an, you will see a lot of Hui. Yeah. So there are two types of Muslims. A lot of you guys, if you've been watching too much CNN, you guys will see. So the Muslims in the Xinjiang Autonomous Region, those are the Uyghur Muslims. Then there's also the Hui Muslims. Now, the Uyghur Muslims, you can tell right away. So they don't look ethnically Asian. They look more Middle Eastern. And but the Hui Muslims, they look just like me. And if they don't put on any traditional Islamic attire, you wouldn't be able to tell. They are 100% ethnic Asians. So if you actually go to the city of Xi'an, you will see a lot of these Hui Muslims. And actually, a lot of them, they're given benefits and privileges. And for example, it is easier for these Hui Muslims for their children to get into a university. So I guess that's the Chinese version of DEI. And if you go to these tourist attractions, you'll see that a lot of these Hui Muslims, they own their small shops, they own their businesses, they could run a mom and pop shop. And there's zero problems, right? The Xi'an's a city of 12 million people, and there are hundreds and thousands of Muslims in the city, but there are zero terrorist attacks, absolutely zero. All the Muslims, they live there peacefully. I don't know where, America is getting this number. They're saying that, there's like 1 million Muslims that's being locked up in China. I mean, you have to remember, so news networks like CNN, ABC, MSNBC, they're also telling you that, gender is all made up. That a man can actually menstruate, and the man can also give birth. So if you feel like you're a woman, you're a woman. So if I feel like I'm a white lesbian, and I guess I'm a white lesbian. Mainstream media, I think they have lost all credibility. I will say this. Yeah, I mean, probably yes. Yes, there are probably some Uyghur Muslims that's locked up, but I can guarantee you guys this. The ones who are locked up, there's a reason for it. It's because they're trouble. Oh, you guys say, China is so bad, Islamophobia, they're so xenophobic, they're racist. That's why they're locking up the Muslims. Well, I have a question. How come if you look at the prison demographic in the United States, I would say probably 80% of the current US prison population, they're either black man or Hispanic man. Geez, I wonder why that is. Now, a lot of you guys are going to get triggered by this point. I'm just saying, so a lot of those black men or Hispanic men, there's a reason why they're locked up. They're locked up because they're causing trouble. I think the more important statistic you guys need to look at is that forget about the ethnicity, forget about even the religion. I would like you guys to actually conduct a background research, right? I want to actually see a detailed report. So how many of those young men that's currently being locked up behind bars in America, how many of them are being raised by a single mother? Yeah, I would like to know. And as a matter of fact, how many of them are being raised without parents at all? And how many of those men who are currently locked up in America has actually attended a church service in the past 12 months? And how many of those young men that's currently locked up in America, it doesn't matter what ethnicity they are, how many of those men were born out of wedlock? Yeah, I would actually love to see that study because I think I already know the answer to my questions. So yes, I'm sure some Muslims, yes, they're locked up behind bars, but there's a very, very good reason for it. I'll give you guys a great example. Have you guys ever heard of a Christian guy? By the way, I'm not talking about just a white Christian. There are 2.3 billion Christians on earth, right? So there are only roughly 1 billion white people on earth, and only maybe 60% are Christians. So the vast majority, probably 70 to 80% of Christians are not white people. Just any Christian guy. Have you guys ever heard a Christian guy go, Christ is king, then blows himself up? I have never ever seen that or heard of that anywhere. Have you guys ever seen or heard of a Chinese guy that says, 上帝 is my eternal? Then he takes out a massive knife and he stabs 20 people. Well, I have never ever seen or heard of that. But every time, a follower of Islam, every time they carry out one of these attacks, they're always shouting out a certain phrase, which I found that to be quite interesting. A lot of people say it has nothing to do with Muslims, has nothing to do with religion. Well, I beg to differ. I think a lot of these people are being indoctrinated. Now, am I saying that, are all Muslims terrible? Well, no, but I think we actually need to sit down and actually have a very, very serious discussion because obviously there are problems. So I've given you guys some examples. For example, if you look at a country like Indonesia, right? So Indonesia is the fourth most populous country on earth. 284 million people, close to the United States. So Indonesia is 87% Muslim. Yeah, 87% Muslim. That's a lot of Muslims, right? Over 240 million Muslims in one country. For the most part, Indonesia is a normal functioning country. I don't really see any terrorist attacks or mass stabbings that's happening in Indonesia. For example, you can look at Singapore, one of the wealthiest nations on earth in terms of GDP per capita. There's a huge Muslim population in Singapore, but if you guys go to Singapore, everything is peaceful. There's no knife attacks, there's no car bombings, there's no violence on the streets. I wonder why that is. And if you're wondering why there are so many Muslims in Singapore, well, you got to know a little bit about history, right? So Singapore actually used to be part of Malaysia. And once again, right, Malaysia, so 30 million people, almost all Muslims, seems to be a very peaceful, normal functioning country. So what is happening to, let's say the Muslims who do end up getting locked up, the ones who do commit violence? And also, this is the one point I find people from the West to be very hypocritical. First of all, obviously, I'm posting this video because of what's going on in the Middle East between Israel and Iran, and also, obviously, Israel's war in the Gaza Strip that's been happening for almost 2 years now. Yeah, it's a terrible, terrible situation. So all the people are saying, all these, so many Westerners, they're saying that, Israel is really, really bad. AIPAC, Zionist lobbies. So, okay, if Israel is so bad, so if they're actually committing genocide, right? So there are 2 million Palestinians, right, that's living in Gaza. Why don't you take them in? Yeah. And also, people in the West, they keep criticizing China. So China has a total of roughly 24 million Muslims. If they're treated so horribly by the Chinese government, by the Chinese Communist Party, if you feel so bad for them, to all the Democrats and the liberals in the United States, why don't you welcome all 24 million Muslims into the United States? Take them in, let them be asylum seekers. Why don't you have them as your neighbors? Have them sleep in your basement? Why won't you do it? Well, also, right, Gaza, people say that, it's an open air prison. You have to remember, so the Gaza Strip, it's bordering a country called Egypt, a country with over 100 million Muslims. So, yeah, if those Palestinians, they're being treated so bad in Gaza, right, why doesn't Egypt open their borders? Why doesn't Yemen open their borders? What about Lebanon? What about Libya or Morocco or Algeria? Why won't you take them in? I think it's a very obvious reason, right? If so many Americans think Israel is so bad, right, why don't you take in the 2 million Palestinians? Other countries won't take them in because they're trouble. So, you have to choose a side. So, you can't just go out there and start hating on everybody because now you're starting to sound like a real hypocrite. You're starting to sound like a hillbilly. For example, you guys say, Israel's so bad. Then at the same time, the Chinese government, that's their official statement, right? That they don't like Israel. They're allies with Iran. And they're 100% supportive of Iran. But here's the thing, you guys hate Israel, and then you guys say that you also hate China. Well, Iran's Israel's enemy, and then you guys also hate Iran. You guys want to go full nuclear on Iran. So it seems like, a lot of Westerners, they can't seem to make up their mind. They don't even know what's right or what's wrong anymore. Well, if you think Israel is so bad, Iran wants to go to war with them, why don't you support Iran then? Then China says Israel's bad. Then China says supporting Iran. Then you guys say that, China is also terrible. So, it's like you guys just can't seem to make up your mind. So you guys just start hating on everybody. Now, if you're asking me, what do I think? And honestly, there's so much BS lies, there's so much propaganda from the United States government, and also to some people, for example, like Charlie Kirk. I think he makes a lot of good points, but every time he talks about China, it's always, China is so bad, China is this and China is that. And I think it's very, very dangerous when these people who are very, very influential, who are multimillionaires, who have tens of millions of followers on social media, when they keep taking things out of context and when they tell their audiences things that are simply not true. On more of a personal note, so I want to give you guys these two examples. So this is in the city of Ottawa, capital of Canada. Most people don't even know that anymore. So yeah, the refugee crisis, right? So the infamous McDonald's on Rideau Street and also Rideau High School. So both of these locations are closed now as of 2025. They've been closed for a while now. And once again, right, I think it's very important for us to have this conversation. For example, so let's say in the United States, right? So why are so many young black men and so many young Hispanic men being locked up in U.S. prisons? Because unless we actually sit down and have an open dialogue and talk about these issues, that is the only way you can actually resolve these issues, these crises. Because if everybody keeps avoiding the elephant in the room, that's when you get to the point of a civil war. And I believe that out of all the Western nations, the UK is probably going to be the first European country to go into a full civil war. And what I mean by full civil war is going to be between the white British people versus all the immigrants, especially against the Muslims in the UK. Because once again, we have to face it. We got to talk about, the elephant in the room. There's a major issue. So how come, the Muslims are 6% of the population in the UK? Well, as of 2025, that is going to change very, very fast. So how come out of the 4,000 most dangerous individuals in the UK, so you're looking at, 95% of them are Muslims. So we have a real issue and we need to actually sit down and have a discussion instead of actually, posting all of these hateful comments or reposting these hateful videos on social media, on Instagram, on TikTok or X, because that's not going to resolve the issue. We need to actually sit down and have an open dialogue about this. Because once again, right, I did mention, right, countries like Singapore, like Malaysia, like Indonesia, they don't seem to have any problems at all. And whatever you guys are seeing on the mainstream media news network about China, 90% BS lies, 90% propaganda. And I'll tell you guys exactly why later this summer, why, the West wants to frame China as the enemy for every single one of their issues. Well, right now, if you live in America, the biggest enemy is probably yourself. Because at this point, I think that after the UK, a full civil war is probably going to break out in the US as well. The McDonald's on Rideau Street and also Rideau High School. If you live in Canada, especially if you lived in Ottawa, everybody knows the Rideau Street McDonald's. I would say it's probably the most dangerous McDonald's, definitely in Canada, but possibly in the world. So fights broke out every single day. Well, at least I would say, thank God that we're in Canada or we're not in the UK or the United States. I haven't heard of any stabbing or shooting. I'm talking about just physical fist fight, right? People getting black-eyed, people getting their tooths knocked out, all kinds of crazy stuff. People getting sent to the hospital for concussion. So I think that McDonald's actually averaged something like 2 911 calls a day. It could be higher. It could be 2.3 911 calls a day. I mean, it's not even just sketchy at nighttime. Even just during the middle of the day on 2:30 p.m. on Wednesday, it's still really, really sketchy. And I can tell you guys this. I've been to that McDonald's many times. They finally shut it down. Once again, that's the elephant in the room. Nobody's allowed to say. Every single time a fight broke out, every time there's a massive brawl at that McDonald's, it's always Muslim people who are involved. Either they're a black Muslim or they're Arab Muslim. They're a refugee from the Middle East. And the reason why that McDonald's has so many Muslims is because right behind it, there's a massive shelter for refugees. So yeah, nobody's allowed to say it. If anybody talks about this issue, it's racism, it's Islamophobia. But we're talking about, 2 911 calls a day. So on average, 2 fights will break out every single day. And sometimes it will turn into a massive brawl between 8, 10, or 15 people. And almost every single time, it's Muslim people who are involved. If you're a Muslim, you should absolutely care because the vast majority of the time it's young Muslim men getting hurt. They're the ones who are getting their teeth pulled out or getting punched in the face or getting a concussion. So, and obviously after so much fighting, that McDonald's finally closed down. And it's the same thing, Rideau High School. I used to live very, very close, like 1 kilometer away. That's 0.6 miles. Yeah, I used to live in Vanier South in Ottawa. I lived there for 4.5 years. So it was very, very close to Rideau High School. That high school is no longer there. I'm not sure what they're doing with that school. And if you guys are wondering, it's the same story as the Rideau Street McDonald's. So constant fighting, gang violence. And I believe that school actually had the highest truancy rate. What is truancy? So kids are skipping school, not showing up to classes for absolutely no reason. And I believe their English proficiency was like less than 50%. It could be lower. It could be 30%. kids are not showing up to classes. I think maybe 30% of the kids are on academic probation. And the people get sent to detention every single day for battery, for misdemeanor, and yeah, all kinds of crazy stuff. So the entire system is failing. And yes, you guessed it. So I would say the demographic, I don't think they actually have actual numbers, but I would say roughly just looking at the students at Toledo High School when it was open, I would say that school was probably 85 to 90% Muslim. I mean, I'm not trying to make up these negative stereotypes. This is the elephant in the room. I think we actually need to sit down and have a discussion. Like, what is happening? How come, that McDonald's, with so many Muslim customers, how come they averaged 2 911 calls a day? How come there's fighting every single day? How come Radio High School was, 80 to 90% Muslim? How come the truancy rate is so high? How come there's so much fighting going on? How come so many kids are on academic probation? How come the English proficiency is so low? Why are these kids so angry and fighting each other every single day? And obviously, eventually, both of these locations closed down. They should have closed down many, many years earlier. So yeah, if you ask the general population, especially in the West, right, if you ask them, is Islam a religion of peace? I think the vast majority of people would disagree. We have a massive issue here. And unless something changes drastically, there needs to be a massive movement. People actually need to sit down in the classroom. We need to have an open and honest discussion. Stop trying to be a snowflake. Stop trying to dodge the topic. I think it's time for each and every one of us to be 100% open and honest with each other, because that is the only way you're going to get this issue resolved. So what do you guys think? It's Islamic values compatible with Western culture and Western values? This topic is going to be continued. And also, I want to let you guys know that I'm preparing a very special full-length documentary on China's century of humiliation. It's very, very important to understand what happened to China for over 100 years and why America will actually be next. So yeah, it's going to be one of my most important and the longest uploads. So that full-length documentary will be released on Independence Day on July 4th. So thank you guys so much for watching and staying all the way until the end. And see you guys next time.